Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Squared Up Coffee Break webinar. This week, we're talking about contributing to our brand new community MP catalog. My name is Matthew Long, and I'm joined this week by Nathan Foreman.
Hello, good afternoon.
So we're coming to you a little bit earlier this week if you're in the States, and that is because of the lovely thing called daylight savings. We've changed here in the UK already, but I believe those of you stateside are still waiting for your daylight savings to come. So unfortunately, Nathan's had to bear the brunt of that one. So we'll return to normal schedule once everyone's flipped over to the normal time. So this week, coming to you a little bit early, what we're going to be talking about basically is contributing to our community catalog. So if you haven't seen our release webinar on this, then I'd advise you to go and check that out. But the short of this is that we have released a new community project that basically makes community management packs front and center in the SCOM console. So essentially, you can now go into SCOM. This is the admin pane in my SCOM console, and you actually get a listing of not just all Microsoft's packs and supported vendor packs, but you can now go to your management packs community pane. You can see here a lovely searchable, tagged, indexable list of management packs for all sorts of awesome things. You can, if you've got those management packs installed, it'll even show you which ones you've got and what versions they are, and if there's an update available. There we go. So you can see I've got some of my management packs are a little bit out of date here. I should probably update those. And you can even set it up to alert you when there's an update available. So this is a great way of discovering new content. Now, the other brilliant thing about this is all driven by the community. So this week, we're going to look at how you can actually contribute to that community MP catalog, either by letting us know about a brand new pack or by adding it yourself. So that's kind of the workflow we're looking at here. So ultimately, this is a community effort, so we need your help. This isn't just a repository that we Squared Up own. In fact, you'll notice this when we look at it later. This is not stored in the Squared Up GitHub repository. We don't at Squared Up here maintain any control. We have a team of community superstars who are maintaining this, but there's only a limited number of them, so we definitely need your help to contribute. So we're going to look at the change workflow, how you can help us add and edit listings in that catalog to keep it up to date and to make sure it's always relevant and full of the best packs available. And then we'll look at some simple workflows for editing an existing listing, which is great if you just need to update a version number somewhere because, hey, a new pack's come out and the author hasn't updated the listing themselves. And we'll also look at adding a brand new MP to the catalog. So key workspace there is you've written the new management pack, you're sharing it with the community, and you want to push it out there. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Nathan is the team lead, I guess, for the community MP catalog project. You're certainly sort of one of the main forces driving that. So Nathan's got all the expertise there and is going to walk us through some of this stuff. Okay, let's get started. So the workflow here actually in terms of editing this is actually quite simple, and it's very similar to what many of you will have from a change management process internally, which is that the catalog is actually backed by a GitHub repository that basically has a list of all the management packs and their details. And making changes to that requires you to follow a standard change request process, essentially. We haven't just let anyone be able to edit those freely. No doubt we'd get some management packs that aren't really very good quality in there, or potentially it would get broken or spammers would take it over. So instead what happens is you have to follow a change request process, and the moderators will then approve that change. So this is what that looks like. The first thing you have to do is you have to fork the repository, which basically in GitHub terms means you create your own personal copy of that repo. So you can do with that whatever you like. And that's sort of very standard sort of open source practice. So you can make changes, you can add new packs, you can do whatever. But the main value in it actually is contributing that back then to the main catalog. And that's the key point here. When you fork the repository, you actually make a copy that's standalone, but it has links back to the original repository, and it can share changes via that link. So basically, you fork the repo into your own account, you make changes that you want to in your own copy, adding a pack or changing some of existing pack's details. You then submit what's called a pull request, which basically is a change request item to say, look at my changes. If you like them and if they're suitable, then the moderators can click a button and basically it automatically pulls in those changes and makes them live in the main repository. So it is literally a change request with a whole bunch of DevOps automation on the back end. Think of it like that. And the moderators will either approve the request or which will go through automatically, or they'll provide some feedback and say, hey, can you tweak this MP a little bit? So Nathan, could you talk a little bit about the kind of stuff that you guys are looking for when you're moderating a management pack?
I would be glad to. Thank you, Matthew. Really, we're not looking for anything extremely elaborate, but we're looking for management packs that have some community support. Usually we look for like a blog post or a GitHub repo that you can download them from, and then just basically that the information contributed makes sense. Right? We're hoping for a description, a version, really the items that another community member searching for that pack would need to find it.
Right. And presumably as well, you're looking for a management pack that has more than like a single monitor in it or something like that.
Correct.
Like one that's worth someone installing, because we've all seen there's MPs, where someone says, I've got a management pack for this, and you import it, or like a vendor management pack. Typically are quite bad for this. We have a management pack we offer as well, and you open it up and there's like one rule in it. It's like, well, that's not really so conducive to actually helping my environment. So
yeah, I think we have, and then for some of those that we find, there is a sample tag in there too, because maybe it's a good sample, but you don't really want to say it's a full management pack.
Right.
So you'll see that on a couple packs too.
Oh, okay. When the author said like, oh, here, this is an example walkthrough, but then you'd extend this yourself. Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So with that, and I've got the moderator team there below. Actually, quite a few of you are on this call. So hello, community moderators. We've basically pulled in sort of some of the best and brightest in the community to help us out with moderating this. So we've got a team of SCOM rock stars there, including MVPs and just some community luminaries. So it's definitely a good crowd of people that you've got here moderating this. So with that, let's actually take a look at an example of editing a listing. So Nathan, you've got a demo for us, haven't you, on just making some simple changes purely using GitHub, not having to use any kind of editors or third-party tools.
Correct. I'll grab the screen here quick and present that.
Cool. So there we go. And while Nathan's changing over, just to note that the instructions that there are written instructions for how to do what we're going to show you here on the wiki for the repository as well. So if you sort of miss a step here, that's fine. You can follow this through yourself later on by reading the instructions. Okay, Nathan, over to you.
So hopefully everyone can see that.
Yep.
Coming through. Just want to reiterate, this really is, as Matthew said, the quick, easy way to get in. Even the demo's quick walking through it. We'll pick on this pack itself, the Community Management Pack Catalog. Say you heard that there's a new version coming out and it didn't get updated in the catalog, but you want to make sure that everyone knows about it. So we go in, we find our details.json. And as Matthew had mentioned, the wiki's up here if you have questions on options in here. But in this case, I just want to take it from 1.0.2.0 and change that last one to .1.
Okay.
We're going to release bug fixes. So pretty common, pretty quick. All you need to do is click on the pencil up here to start the editing process. GitHub does the work of creating the fork for you. I'm in a read-only account, and it says you don't have permission to write here. We'll make you a new branch. So, great. I go in, I'll make my change, scroll down to the bottom, and this is one of two important parts here. You get to propose the file change, but the description helps the moderator. So I'm just going to put in.
It's worth noting you've also signed into GitHub before you've done this, right? So GitHub is a free tool. Anyone can create an account. You just give it an email address and you're good to go. So that's sort of the step 0 is sign in first. So yeah, so I guess like important to do that first and to give meaningful descriptions when you submit these changes, right? So people understand what's actually happening. Okay.
Yes, thank you for that reminder. It just needs it's a free account and you don't need any special permissions. So I've put in here, I want to propose a change to this file. It's updated to the latest version with the bug fixes.
Cool.
So I click propose file change, and following the process that Matthew had talked about, it actually brings me up here and says, well, here's your changes. And it gives me this button right up top. Would you like to create a pull request? Perfect. Click that. It opens it up to our pull request template, which is just a couple quick questions. So I'll go through and say, well, what does this fix? Increases it to the newest version. No open issues, and I don't have any other comments.
Yep.
So you click.
if there was an issue open, there's a little button you can click, isn't there, on the UI at the top that just says link to issue. It'll give you a search field and say, oh yeah, it's issue 15 or whatever, and you can say this fixes a problem someone's highlighted. We'll talk about issues again in a minute, but cool.
Yes. Okay. Yep. You can link that in. So you put your notes in. You click create pull request. Now this is going to create a new pull request, which is going to get into that moderating process, and potentially you're done here. There's one last item to wait for. You'll see that we have a goldish yellow color here that says some checks haven't completed. We have continuous integration that's going to go through and make sure all the JSON's valid, check a couple items. So if I just hit F5 a couple times here, we should see that change to green. And once that's done, you're done. You just wait for the moderators to approve it, or if they make a change or a request, you'll get an email at your GitHub account that says, oh, the moderators had a question on this.
It's worth noting as well that the moderation team obviously aren't being paid for this, so it might take a day or two for them to sort of review the change and approve that. So please be patient with this, but people are giving up their free time to moderate this for you guys. So that continuous integration, that's running, there we go. So that's running checks basically, isn't it? Like it validates that the JSON is okay, that you've filled out all the right fields, you haven't broken anything. So it does fail.
Correct.
All it means is there's a syntax problem somewhere, and it'll tell you what's wrong with it anyway. So it might say you missed out this particular option, or that you put too many digits in the version number, that kind of thing. So it's pretty obvious what's wrong with it when something is wrong.
Correct, and there's steps in the documentation that take you through, but it just breaks it down to these individual tests here, and it'll just say this is missing.
Yeah.
So, but at this point, it is green, and the pull request process is in. I'm done. That's all that's needed. If I need to make a future comment, there's a box here, but I think in 1 or 2 minutes you've contributed to the catalog.
Perfect. I mean, hopefully you can see this, guys. This is actually pretty easy. So we would definitely employ that if you find one of our management packs and the catalog is listed as being out of date, like okay, Kevin Holman's just gone and released a new management pack, a new version of one of his management packs. That's in the catalog. It's not up to date right now. Please do let us know. If you haven't got the time necessarily, or this still looks a bit daunting to you to actually raise the PR, we'd still value like creating an issue. So Nathan, if you scroll up to the top and take us to the issues screen, if you find a bug with or a problem with one of the management packs, the listing, I should say, not the actual management pack, but information on the listing in here, you can go to the issues tab, and you can basically just effectively log an issue to say, hey, there's an issue here, or there's a management pack missing, or something isn't quite working right. You can see there's a couple of issues already open there. And even if it's just like, okay, there's a new version of this management pack or a new MP that I think should be in here, I don't have the time to contribute this, or this looks a bit daunting still, even just like letting us know that you found something here, it would be great, because we'd rather have that catalog full of stuff and have a slightly more work than have sort of a catalog where we're missing out on all the management packs that you guys effectively need to monitor your environment. And then Nathan's showing you there. There's just a good little template to fill out.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. It even walks you through what items we need. So
cool. So let me jump back to the slides quickly. Thank you so very much for that, Nathan. So that's our sort of simple case demo. Oh, let me share my screen out before I do this, because I always forget to do that. So that's sort of an existing listing. Now, let's say you're an MP author and you want to actually add a brand new pack. Well, how do I go about doing that? Clearly, that editor lets you change a single file quite easily, but it's going to be tricky for me to make a whole bunch of changes at once. So to do that, you need to work with a Git repository, because that's what Git is. You can ultimately do that with any text editor you like, Notepad, and a copy of the Git client for your appropriate OS. That said, Visual Studio Code is a very popular, free, lightweight, cross-platform, open source text editor. That's enough sort of buzzwords there. That has very solid Git integration built in, and importantly, it also does syntax and error highlighting for PowerShell, JSON, Markdown, a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And that's cool, because those are the 3 file formats that basically you'll find in the repository. There's a details.json file, which is the listing of a management pack and its version and its details. There's a readme.md markdown file, which is basically the readmes that you see in the catalog, where we show all the interesting details about what's in the management pack and that kind of stuff. And then there's the PowerShell piece of that. There's some PowerShell scripts inside the inside the repository that do a couple of pieces of automation, including the testing, but also there's a helper script that lets you add new packs in. So the fact that it just does syntax highlighting for all of those things makes it very easy to use that editor to work with all of this. Likewise, Git has a command line client for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and has various free and paid offerings by third parties. So if you already contribute to GitHub, you are likely already set up for this stuff. If you don't, and you follow the instructions and contribute to the community catalog, well, great. You can probably now contribute to other projects as well. So this stuff is probably worth looking at. And like I said, Visual Studio Code is actually my text editor of choice. I really like it. So it's definitely worth checking it out if you haven't seen that before. It's great for writing PowerShell scripts in. I'll give you that hint for free. So it's definitely worth looking at for that. In terms of the workflow, what it basically looks like is that you will have what it's called the original upstream repository. So that is the MP catalog as it stands, that GitHub repository Nathan was showing you a minute ago. And then when you fork that into your account, you basically create a copy of that sits on GitHub that's called the remote in sort of Git parlance, which you can do whatever you like with. And then when you actually want to work with that, you need to pull it down onto your local computer on disk, which is called the local copy of that repository. It's quite weird, and it's called a distributed version control system, but basically you have multiple copies of that repository. Like you have one locally that only you can see, and then one publicly that everyone can see, and then maybe there's multiple upstreams there where you have like the original projects this came from. So in this case, it'd be the original upstream, the fork, which is your version, and then the on-disk copy, which is where you actually work on the system. But that's not too important, but I want to just highlight this term so when I go through this next demo you can kind of see how that all fits together. So the next demo we want to show you guys is actually adding a brand new MP to the catalog. So the instructions for this are also available on the wiki. I'm not going to go through the entire thing end to end because it just involves me installing Visual Studio Code and the Git client, and that's basically running 2 MSIs and clicking next, finished. So there's not really anything convoluted to doing that. And like I said, you might already have those tools set up. So I don't want to waste your time walking you through that. So let me jump to my demo. So I have got the repository up here. So what you'll need to do is once you sign into Git, you'll need to, first thing is fork the repository. You need to create your own copy. Now this actually got done for you anyway if you followed Nathan's example behind the scenes, so you already have one. If you haven't followed that already, you basically click the fork button here at the top of the screen, and it will then say to you, okay, I'm going to fork it into your account, and what you'll wind up with is something that looks like this, which as you can see looks basically exactly the same, but it's got my name on it in front of the project name rather than being MP catalog, and it's telling me that as well the branch is currently 4 commits behind MP catalog master. That basically means that there are changes in the sort of parent main copy that I haven't synced down yet into my copy of this, and I'll show you how to do that in code in a minute. But just worth noting, the process of sending changes back and forth between my copy of the repository and the main MP catalog community is a manual process. You can't, it won't automatically sync back and forth. You have to tell it that you now want to go and bring the changes in or push the changes back up to it. Okay, now that said, I've got the fork done. What I need to do now is clone this locally so I actually have it on my computer so I can make changes using, like I said, whatever text editor I want. So I'm going to do this using code. So I'm going to click the clone or download button and then click the copy button here on this link to copy that URL onto the clipboard. There we go. And if I bring up Visual Studio Code, this is what it looks like here. Basically, you have a text editor, a multi-pane text editor in the sort of right side. And on the left, you have your Explorer, which shows you all your different editors. So it's kind of similar to a lot of text editors on the market. If you've used like Atom and Sublime, you'll be very at home with this. Okay.
And while you clone that down, I was just going to quick add, if all these Git terms are starting to get muddy, it is a very common system used in software development. Mm-hmm. So going out to Google, you should be able to find a bunch of great examples.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is a very common sort of workflow. Like I said, I imagine some of you are probably already familiar with this. Right, if I press F1, I get the lovely sort of command palette, which lets me put in commands. So I put in clone. Oh, you see there's only one. So git clone. I hit enter. It asks me for the URL. So I do paste. It says to me, where do you want to store that? So I'm going to store that under repo MP catalog. Press enter. And what will happen in the background now is it'll go and pull those files onto disk. And if I hit open repository, this will now open up all the different folders. There we go. Now let me minimize these windows here. The other thing that will happen when you pull down the library is it will say, we've got some recommendations for this workspace. And what those actually are those are plugins for Visual Studio Code that we say for this workspace you probably want to use when you're editing the catalog. So if you hit show recommendations, it will say, okay, well, we think you should have the PowerShell extension, the Git lens extension, which makes working with Git easy, and the Markdown lint, which allows you to basically spell check and format your Markdown files properly. So very useful for the README document. So go ahead and install all those. I've got them already installed, so that's fine. I'll click on the Explorer again, and you can see I've got a whole bunch of management packs that are listed as these different folders, and inside any of these there's a details.json file. If I click on that, it opens up, and I also have a readme MD as well, which talks about the actual MP. So if I wanted to, I could just create a new folder with the name, create those files manually, and go through and do that. However, Nathan has very kindly written a little helper script in this repository that actually does that all for you, which I definitely recommend you use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the command palette and some built-in tasks we've put into the extensions for this to make it really easy to actually run that. So if I hit F1 again and say run task, the first thing I can do is I can pick from the list. I can either add a management pack, I can add the original SCOM MP catalog as an upstream remote, which makes it very easy for me to sync those changes down. Remember I said I was missing some changes from it because it said my repository was 4 commits behind. I can test the repository or current folder. So basically I can run those tests that we have in the PR process locally here before I submit the PR. So I know ahead of time whether my changes are good. And you need to worry about the update test files when that's the system task that basically updates all the test files locally. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit add MP catalog as an upstream remote. I'm going to go and do that. And it just runs the git command for you. And you can just press any key you like to close that terminal. So I'll do that. And then I'm going to press F1, run task, and I'm going to pick, this time, add management pack. So this will fire up PowerShell for me and invoke that JSON helper script that Nathan's added automatically. This is basically walk me through some prompts for what it needs, and then once that's done, it'll go and create all the files that I need for this. So I'm going to start typing this information in. While I do that, Nathan's going to explain what I'm actually doing here, just to save you guys some time. But basically, I've taken a management pack suggested by one of the community members, and I'm going to add that to the repository now so it's available for everyone else. So Nathan, if you want to just walk through what I'm doing while I type this through, that'd be great. So
yep, I will do that. It's really just a simple script that's going to produce that JSON we saw earlier. You'll see the questions here, the pack system name, just like you're familiar with in SCOM, the pack display name. This is what shows up in that UI that you saw a little bit of earlier. You can also pull it from SCOM. It'll ask you for the download URL. This is where the users get sent if they click. Current version. It's important here to get that correct in those 4 elements. This is what provides that check for updates. The author, and then there is a short description of just what this is going to do, and if it's free. That's a true or false. You have to make sure you type it in those correctly. Mm-hmm.
And the last thing it asks for is some tags. So basically the MPs are tagged in the catalog with various different things like it's free, it's from an MVP, that kind of thing. And you mentioned already like there's a sample tag as well. So can you recommend me a tag here for this, Nathan, I should probably put in?
I
think there is
off the top of my head, I'm having trouble thinking of one. I haven't looked at this pack personally, but UPS.
UPS is probably, that's a good one. So UPS, and let's add that. And also
SNMP would be another good one because it's probably SNMP monitoring.
Yep. There we go. And it's also going to be, let's put in Eaton as well. So if someone searches for that, they'll find it.
Yes.
That's the vendor. Yeah. And then I press enter to do blank. There we go. And it will say it's created it. And Visual Studio Code by default automatically also opens the files that they get created. Unfortunately, in this case, it always opens the README first. So if I click on the details.json, there we go. There's what I created. So that's a really easy way of adding a management pack there. So the last 2 things I need to do basically is submit that into the repo, into my local copy. And then I need to tell my local copy to sync that change with GitHub so that it's available publicly on the cloud. And then I can go ahead and create my PR. So I'm going to do that very quickly now. I know we're running a bit late, but let me just finish this off. So if I click on the source control tab here, it will show all the changes that I've currently made in this repository. So I can click on these and preview that I've added a file to the index. So the index is the listing of all management packs. You can see that there. I've gone and added a details file. That's not showing any green here because it's a brand new file. And likewise, this readme.md, it's actually blank and it's not great for me to do that. I probably should fill this out and put some details in, but for the purposes of time, you can imagine the kind of thing I type into that. So I'm done. I'll say added Eaton MP. So this is a description of what I'm doing locally, and I'm going to hit the tick button, and it'll say the no current stage is no changes stage. Do you want me to just make all the currently changed files and commit them directly? I'll say yes. Oh, and what's the problem with Gits? Very quickly. Oh, probably I haven't actually got the Git client probably configured on here. I haven't configured the client, so I haven't actually followed the workflow properly for that. So if I hit basically, if I hit commit, normally that would go in, and then down here, this little icon would change from a two pair of arrows. It would change into like an arrow pointing up to say I've got changes missing, and I can press F1 and do git push. There we go. And that will then push that to GitHub. At that point, if I then go back to my repository here, it would say like, a few seconds ago, I committed some changes. I'll be able to see those in here. And the last thing I can do is click pull request to go and create a PR between my repository and the main repository to pull in those changes. So here I pick the base fork as being the MP community catalog, and then the head fork would be my repository here. And there aren't any differences to compare because I couldn't push, but normally here you'd see all the files that I changed, and I could hit create PR, and that would go ahead exactly as Nathan showed before. So hopefully you can see that it isn't too difficult to actually go and create a new PR using code, assuming you can follow the install instructions properly, which I clearly didn't. So I'd definitely recommend for you guys, if you are already contributing and you have a management pack, please consider sending us a pull request with your MP. The community is really, full of vibrant packs at the moment, and the more packs we can add there, I mean, this list is ridiculous, but the more packs we can get in here, the better everyone's SCOM environment gets, and the less time we spend redoing the same work, and the more time we spend actually enhancing these projects and moving SCOM and everything forward. Okay, hopefully that's been helpful for you guys. Let me wrap up now, and then we'll do some Q&A. Okay, so if this is your first coffee break, please let us know what you want us to cover in future episodes. Take the squareup.com topics survey. This lets us know what you want us to talk about on the coffee breaks. And there's a free text field where you can suggest your own topic, as well as a whole list of topics that we think are interesting that you guys might want, and you can upvote those and let us know what you want us to cover. You can see what's coming up next on the Coffee Break microsite at squareup.com/coffee-break-series. There's a registration form there as well, so you can set up a colleague or friend if you think they find this stuff interesting, as well as a listing of what's coming up next, so you can plan your calendar accordingly. As I noted, for those of you who come on a bit earlier, just because daylight savings this week, normally we do that 3 p.m. UK time. The recordings and slides are published via our blog at squareup.com/blog, along with a wealth of other great content, so it's definitely worth checking that out. If you go there, you'll also find the link for the recording for the release webinar for the Catalog MP, so this is your first time seeing it, definitely go and check that out. Nathan and Richard Benwell talk about that in great depth. And then finally, there's a YouTube playlist for this series as well. So there's many hours now of good Squared Up content, not just on Squared Up, but also on SCOM and enterprise monitoring in general. It's definitely worth checking that out if this is your first coffee break and you haven't seen that stuff before. Now, as always, our technical team are online, as well as myself and Nathan. So if you have any questions about the Catalog MP or SCOM or Squared Up in general, please feel free to raise those in the chat now. If you don't have any questions, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Nathan, for getting up early and jumping on this webinar.
Thank you. Looking forward to see if there's any questions popping up here.
Yep, absolutely. And if you don't have any questions, guys, thank you very much and have a great day.